Hey everyone, good morning. It is daily drop-in time happening every single morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. We are starting off our morning with Dr. Neil Gupta. Neil, I'm so excited that you're here. We're going to be talking about communication. We have some fun things that we're going to be previewing. Of course, we have some good news that we're going to be sharing, and we will kick off our morning with all of you with a wonderful morning cheers. So go get your coffee ready. Make sure you spit out the toothpaste, and we'll be right back. Good morning. Hey, Neil, how are you?
I'm doing good. I mean, I get an email from Ray like a couple weeks ago to say, "Would you like to jump in a daily drop in?" And that was I think that was what 3 seconds later I responded. So
I am always looking for a time where you and I can be live, talk shop, hang out, catch up, and this just seemed like the perfect medium to do that. So thank you for coming live with me.
I love it. Thank you very much.
All of you know, and I know you're already saying good morning in the comments, so it's so good to see you. Good morning, good morning. You guys know that Daily Drop-In is designed to be a space to talk shop for whatever you need. We know it's early Friday morning. You're either getting ready for your students to head into a really wonderful day in the classroom, or maybe you're still on summer break and you're just tuning in with your cup of coffee, snuggled on the couch, thinking through some ideas, some food for thought elements. And we just want to be here to be accessible and brainstorm with you as needed. Our theme all week, Neil, has been communication. And I just thought it was the perfect wrap up to have you close out our week, because I can only imagine, as we're watching you on camera sitting in your office, that you've been focusing a lot on communication in your role. Will you tell us a little bit about what you do in education?
Sure. So I am at work this morning. I want to make sure I was in a good spot for it, but I'm in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. I'm the director of secondary education, so I oversee our middle schools and our high schools in our district. We've got our 6-8 middle schools and then our high school, and I oversee the principals. I oversee athletic programs, just whatever's needed to help support and lead work for them. Communication is important. That's kind of, I think, most of the time, kind of the running joke is this is not my office. It's my laptop and my phone, and I could be, anywhere, my backpack, and then I'm anywhere. Yeah.
No, and I mean, I can only imagine with the start of the year and your responsibilities, your goal always is to have as clear, concise, simple communication that benefits as many people as possible. And we've talked about that all week. So I'm very, very excited to get into that later as we get into our brainstorm bank and everything else. I do want to make sure that all of you are ready for our morning cheers. We are very excited for you this morning to be up and ready for an awesome day. So it's good to see all of you. I see a lot of people very excited to see you, Neil. You have quite the fan base.
No, I think they came to see you, and they just happened to kind of, oh, Neil's here. Okay.
No, I think they're excited to see you. Not only your perspective as an administrator, which obviously will be so fun to talk shop, but you do so much to support educators. I mean, I know you're in the Teach Better Speakers Network, but beyond that, I vividly remember connecting with you because you are always sharing insight. And I think that culture, that mindset, that mentality is not only something that we always encourage for our Teach Better family, but really something that allows educators to always be on this pursuit of better, right? When you're sharing and collaborating, it's just a powerful way to live life. I mean, what kind of brought that for yourself? I mean, have you always been this way?
So I think I have always been this way. I think my wife kind of reminds me that this is not normal. Those are those times when the people around you say, like, gosh, you need to like sit back a little bit and not always feel like you have to kind of be in that area, in that space. But, I think it really comes from this aspect of, when early on, when I would read an article in educational leadership or something like that, I don't know what you do, but when I get done reading the article, I'm like searching for that person on the internet, and then right before a conference, for example, and you get the sessions, you can see what the sessions are going to be when you go to this conference. Well, I'm actually emailing them and saying, would you like to have coffee? Would you like to have dinner? Would you like to? And the funny thing is it's kind of like people don't, they usually don't have dinner plans. Nobody's it's reversed. People aren't asking them to go to dinner. They're usually going by themselves because they haven't made arrangements. So the answer is yes. And so that idea of being a connected educator, connected person is something that I gravitate towards. But on the flip side, not just for me to kind of soak in energy and understanding and everything like that, but also this aspect of, turning around and making sure I'm connecting with other people. And I love meeting people. I love talking to people either through social media or in person. And then, sometimes people will, when you say, hey, let me know if you have any questions or if you need anything, I really mean that. And so, if people reach out to me, I'm trying to help them out. I think one thing through another. I love to present and be at conferences and all that kind of stuff, just like you. So I got attached with ASCD, and through going from presentations and working with them and doing some different things to, hey, let's go ahead and run for the board. And so I ran for the board. I'm on the board. I'm in my third year coming in, and the president this coming year. And really what that means is like huge servant leader now. Now it means like a huge servant leader. How can I really help to bring the voice of our educators and see how I can help kind of, do whatever I can to kind of help from an organizational standpoint, but from an individual standpoint also.
I just think that's so cool. Shout out to everything that you've done. I hope that people go check out ASCD if they're not familiar with all the stinking resources. Like, that website is robust, and there are not only elements of that website, but there's elements leading you to then books and resources and printable downloads and other people to connect with. I mean, if you're looking to start really your exploration into any topic in education, that is a extremely robust place to begin, don't you think?
Absolutely. And they just went through a brand refresh. Their website's been updated in the past month. So if you take a look, Ray, you actually said it better than I think that what we had in the past, because things are now curated. So you do a Google search and you'll be in the ASCD, and you'll be able to find the articles, the podcasts, the books and everything to certain things. And again, it's that one step further of how do you continue to help, especially right now, educators that are, experiencing things all around the world, not just the United States.
Well, and the Teach Better family knows this. If you guys follow us on social media, I mean, right now alone, we're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. The Teach Better team's kind of constantly sharing resources and posting. ASCD is one of our first go-tos when we're looking for, okay, not just blogs at teachbetter.com. Yes, we publish a lot of blogs, but who else is talking? Who else has a topic that we can amplify their voice and their story? ASCD is somewhere we go probably on a consistent basis. I bet if you scroll through our Facebook or LinkedIn feed for the Teach Better team, you're going to see 2 or 3 ASCD blogs every single day, because there's so much content, and the approach that ASCD takes is really rooted in research. And I think that allows educators to not only get great information, but then go connect with the other resources that came together to culminate that piece, which really allows us to be better, which I just really value.
Which is awesome, because this person I admire has this quote that says, "Fluff ain't enough." And that's exactly what that's about.
It's true. You're right, guys. Fluff ain't enough. I love that. It's so cool. I need that up on my wall, I think, in my new office, like a big, be funny.
Love it.
Well, Neil, I love that you stay busy. I do want to touch on one element, and I didn't expect to talk about this with you, but you brought it up, so this isn't my fault. But in your description that you provided us with, one of the things you said you do is when you attend a conference, you're looking through the sessions, you see who's presenting, and then you reach out to them prior to attending their session. And I have to tell you, I love not only doing this, but I love when people like reach out to me and want to connect, whether it's, you don't have to take up their whole day, but buying them a cup of coffee or inviting them to dinner and getting a group together. I actually think that's where the magic of conference networking happens. It's not when you're sitting in a session, it's when you are really conversing with other educators that can challenge your thinking. But I will tell you, Neil, this week is all about communication, and the act of reaching out to somebody is a hard communication piece. Do you have like tips on How do you do that? Like, I know it sounds silly to ask, but how do you do that?
You know, I don't know. I don't know if it's like, and again, I don't know if it's wiring that's in the brain sort of thing, but I think it's really this aspect of, you know, we're all in this same work together, you know, and we have to be over that hump of feeling like we're not worthy or we can't ask, or, you know, I don't like it. I'm sure we've talked a lot of times about I'm just a teacher, or I'm just this, or I'm just that. And, you know, those things aren't there. You know, the neat thing is when you get up and close and personal to, like I said, these presenters or these people that have such huge experiences, they're just people too, and they actually want to, you know, because we got into education all for that same reason. And so, you know, there doesn't have to be this divide of like, well, I don't feel like I'm worthy, or I don't feel like I can do that. I think that it's an opportunity going into the room, for example. It doesn't have to be even the presenter. Going into the room, your goal should be, or going to the conference, the goal should be, I'm going to walk out with my notes, but I'm going to walk out with 5 contacts. I'm going to walk out with 5 Twitter handles. I'm going to walk out having met 5 people. You know, one time I was with Dwight Carter, another ed leader I got to work with, and we were walking into we were in a conference. We were going to the first session, and I'm like 5 steps away going into the door. He said, "What's your goal for this conference?" And I was like, okay, Dwight Carter's asking me this huge question. Go and find Dwight Carter if you haven't followed him already. But I'm walking in going, okay, what kind of profound statement should I make? Like, I'm trying to think I'm trying to, you know, my goal for this conference is to, and whatever. I don't even know what I said, but whatever it wasn't probably real, and it wasn't authentic. Well, I said, what do you think? What do you think? And he said, I want to sit in the back of the room. I want to find people who look like that they walked in by themselves, and I want to see and I want to find that person. It may have been their first conference, and I want to support them. And I just loved that, like that attitude and that belief. And so I'm usually an upfront guy. I'm the guy who likes to go up front and sit at the sessions and things like that. But we sat in the back, and we just got to connect with people. And, you know, it was their first conference, or they weren't sure what to do, but it was learning from them as much as it was learning for us. And I thought that connectedness was pretty powerful during that conference.
I feel like that is so powerful. It's such a good reminder. And it's not only a good reminder for when you're at conferences, it's a good reminder anytime you have the opportunity to connect with somebody. This could be your institute day that you have next week. This could be a conference that you attend later in October. This could be when you log on to Twitter and you see somebody participating that in a Twitter chat that you haven't seen in a while. I mean, any of those opportunities are so important. I appreciate the reminder. And if you're watching this right now, we're live every single morning for Daily Drop-In, Monday through Friday on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And then afterwards, it gets uploaded as an episode of the Teach Better Talk podcast. Share what you're listening right now. Share it with a friend. Share it on your social media feed. Because if we could share this reminder, think about all the connections. People everywhere would be challenged to continue to connect, and we want everybody to consider themselves a connected educator. That's a big goal for us. So I love that, Neil. Hey, I want to get into some celebrations, some good news, some important elements of our day. You ready to start us off?
Let's do it. I'm ready for this.
All right, you guys know what we do here in this segment. We get to start every single morning off with some good news, some celebrations. I will say, Neil, I have 2 holidays today. I think one is cool and one is a little spooky. The first is it's National Left Hand Day, which I think is great. Are you left-handed by chance?
I'm not, but I have one son that is, and you know, it's funny because he's 20 years old, and we still like. I forget that, but like things like when we sit next to each other at dinner, you know, we're playing pickleball. He and I are playing pickleball, and we are the worst. You know, having a father-son team play doubles together is not a good thing. Sometimes it's like tennis, sort of thing. But you know, he plays left-handed, I'm right-handed, and so sometimes, like, you know, it just doesn't work well sometimes. But I forget those sorts of things at times. But then we get into a little fight on the court and that sort of thing, and you know, and then we remember. So I'm reminded of it constantly that, there is
Yep.
they are out there. So they get a day. That's awesome.
They get a day. And I think it's exciting. If you're in the comments and you write with your left hand, we want to know. Better yet, if you're in the comments and you really can't write with your left hand, you in no way have the skill, we also want to know that too. That would be really helpful. The other thing that I think is worth noting, and it is important as, August is here. So take a deep breath, maybe take a sip of coffee right now. It is Friday the 13th today. And I will tell you that never really meant anything to me. It was always the ongoing joke. And then COVID hit on March 13th on a Friday, and everything kind of changed. So happy Friday the 13th, friends. We are excited for what's in store, and we can't wait to be back on Monday to hear all the goofy things that happened to you today.
Absolutely. That it's so funny that you reminded me of that. I didn't even pick up that it's Friday the 13th. I'm a big horror movie person. I love to watch scary movies. I love it. My wife and my boys do not. So I'm usually by myself, somewhere, and I love just a good scare. I love kind of that lights out, dark sort of thing. So I may have to try to find a movie this weekend or tonight or something for that.
I want to clarify. You can go do that on your own. I'm going to hang out with your wife and your two kids because I in no way like to be around horror or scary movies. That sounds terrible. Oh my goodness. I also, Neil, have a fun good news story that I think you're going to like this one. And I got this from our Good News Network. There's a few different sites that we're able to go to for good news every single morning for Daily Drop-In. This one was brand new over the last few days, and I just loved this concept. So the title is Remarkable 10-Year-Old Inspires the World to Donate 500,000 Books for Kids as a Catalyst for Kindness. Did you see this one, Neil?
No, that's awesome, though.
Oh, my God. It's so cool. It says, one boy is on a big mission to share joy of reading with hundreds of thousands of other kids, only 10 years old, but after winning a student kindness contest in 2020, he's caught the bug to do more, and he wants to find a way to donate over 500,000 books to kids in Texas. He says, kindness is a virtue we all possess, and if we are willing to, he says, we can make magic happen. So why not start today? Because right now, that's what we need to do more than ever. So it goes through, he's already collected about 120,000 books, and he's trying to get to that 500,000 mark. He's an incredible little boy that I just think he's on a great mission for the start of the year.
What I most love is obviously the notion, because the concept of kindness has been around for a long time, but just I think it's this aspect of we talk to our students sometimes and say, when you grow up, you're going to be thinking about such and such. And I love that we get these stories of students and kids that are doing it now, and they're doing it not because it's a class assignment and not because their parents are telling them to do that sort of thing, but they're doing it because of the kindness of their heart. And I just love that those things are spotlighted. I love when I still get I do get goosebumps when I see kindness posters, and those are cool. But when kids are wearing kindness shirts, they're actually saying they're not saying I'm some big bad guy right there. I'm saying I'm putting it right on the top of my shirt. That's pretty cool.
I love it. And I think that these big audacious dreams are something to celebrate. I think that there's a small element of hope and large goals that not only become intimidating, but we encourage our students to figure out how to make realistic goals. And that's actually something that I have taught in my background in middle level education. How do you set a realistic goal? And yet you read these articles and you're like, there's no way that when a kid came home after school or over summer break after playing on the playground and said, hey, Mom, I think I'm going to do this thing where we're going to collect 500,000 books. And the parent said, that seems like a very realistic goal, right? What a wonderful element. And, our good news stories every single morning is not just to hopefully, inspire, right? Those of you that are choosing to tune in for Daily Drop-In, whether you're tuning in live or after the fact, catching the recording after, or as an episode of Teach Better Talk podcast. But it's also to create and foster discussion, right? Can you bring this as a fun fact to your staff later this week? Or when you're walking down the hall, when you see a colleague, can you be like, dude, I just heard this crazy article. We should discuss it. Or could you even bring this up to your first grade classroom and say, what do you think about all this? And that's where this magic of somebody doing something incredibly powerful can then grow into even more than what they originally had thought of.
See, I love that last part, because to me, it's like the first person, I don't know who it is, but the first person who broke the 4-minute mile, like way back, it was like, you can't run faster than a 4-minute mile. You can't do it. And then right when the first person did it, then all of a sudden other people were able to do it. And so I think, to your point, you like, it's this cool idea of like, this stuff is out there. People are doing it now. And it's not about beating them. It's just finding where's your passion and go for it. Like, go for it. Go big. Don't feel like it has to be small or that you can't do that. So I always help that flex that muscle sort of thing.
I love it. And it's interesting these days. I don't know why this didn't process with me, but as we were talking about what we wanted the Daily Drop-In to evolve into, right? We began this in March of 2020 as a way to be accessible as the world was changing and educators had a lot of questions. And we didn't necessarily have the answers, but the hope would be that we at least could create a space where people could share their ideas, and maybe something would be a solution for someone, right? And as we got into, okay, we're going to relaunch Daily Drop-In, people really felt like they were a part of a community. They loved starting their morning this way. What do we really want it to be? The good news story became an element of discussion. And I really think that as we continue to share good news every single day, we can really grow from the experience of others, not only in celebrating the work that they're doing, but hopefully building a few connections ourselves. So whether you go and find this article, there's actually a video in the article that you can go and show to a colleague or share out to staff or show to your students of the little boy's story from a news outlet. So I really encourage you guys to not just take this piece of information, but whether you're donating to this cause or donating in some other way, spreading the word, amplifying voices. That's a powerful element of this whole thing.
That's great. What an awesome like it is. I love even how you're not just sharing that story, but kind of giving that challenge for what are you going to do with this story now with it. That's cool.
So cool. Neil, this week focused on communication. Obviously, an element of communication is sparking a conversation, whether you're texting a presenter that you hope to see in the future and trying to find time to meet up for coffee, or sharing a fun fact with your staff or a news story with a friend that you're trying to foster a conversation. I'd love to transition into our brainstorm bank because I have some questions for you really strategically related to communication with parents, communication with staff, and communication with students, and how we can bring these ideas all together as we've been talking about it all week, so that educators, whether they've already started in the classroom or maybe they're headed back in a few weeks here, kind of have some things in line of how they plan to communicate with all these elements. Do you mind if we transition?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. All right, this is not new. You guys know that we have an element of our brainstorm bank every single day in the Daily Drop-In. This is where we encourage you to share your questions and foster discussion around something that might be on your mind. Don't forget that if you have something that pops into your brain that you don't want to forget, that you want to make sure we discuss on Daily Drop-In, you can always head to teachbetter.com/brainstorm-bank. Or if it's easier to remember, go to teachbetter.com/daily drop-in and you'll be able to submit in our brainstorm bank. That way, if it comes to mind during lunch or even at 3:00 in the afternoon, you can quickly submit your question to make sure that we are able to discuss it on the Daily Drop-In. Neil, our discussion all week on communication has been a doozy because there's a lot of ways to communicate. Do you think that your communication has evolved over time, or how does that process go for you?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved over time. And, I would say that it's evolved due to failure. You learn from mistakes that were made, and you learn from those mistakes and try to incorporate those things kind of as things go along. My first, I guess, major one, and I'll tell you the problem that happened, and then I'll tell you kind of how I'm trying to resolve it. I never think I'm always there, because then you turn the corner and find out that you didn't communicate as well as or effectively as you thought you did. But I was overseeing a committee way back. I was a district administrator in my second year as a district administrator, and we were working on a big, huge initiative. and which involved, the community impact, student impact across the district. I mean, it was a huge thing. But I had a committee together, and I had this committee that worked together. You're going to know where I'm going with this in a second. Had a committee I was working with, and we worked with this committee. I had teachers from every grade level. I had all kinds of people, staff members that were working on this, and we worked for a good 8 months on this work to unveil it, to tell the Board of Education and the community that this is what we were going to do based on the 8 months of research and best practice and all this stuff that happened. So we go to this board meeting 8 months later, and believe it or not, the Board of Education that had never heard about this thing that we were working on, the community that never heard about what we were working on, seemed to be baffled by it. I mean, I can't believe why that they couldn't understand why we wouldn't have just trusted us, completely. And so it failed miserably, which it should have, because we had done all this work, but didn't bring people along through that process, and so this idea of like integrating and creating a couple things. First of all, there was no community voice in that committee, which really hurt us. And then the second part was there were no chances for feedback loops and updates along the way. So the timeline can still be my timeline. When I think now as an administrator, I might say, I've got a week to work on this, or I've got 3 weeks to work on something, or a month, or 3 years. But it's not necessarily always changing the timeline, but it's, do I have the right voices at the table? Am I gathering feedback from the right people that need to be a part of that? And then am I creating these feedback loop sessions, not just one-way newsletter, things that say this is what we're working on, but this is what we're working on. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Along the way. And then as you do that, you obviously are going to get better feedback and better communication, and you're going to build capacity and understanding, and your plan's going to hopefully get better. And obviously then it won't be a shock like in awe like I did that first time.
You just brought up 13,000 things we have to talk about, but holy cow, this is not only a wonderful suggestion for communication from an administrative leader perspective, right? Like all those people that are in our admin mastermind for the Teach Better team, those leadership roles, yes, great goals. This should be the case for any communication, whether you are talking to your students, talking to your parents, even if you are on an educational team, like you work on a core team, communicating with your team members, these elements are so important. And I think there's some fear that comes with some of the pieces that you suggested. So I'd like to talk about it. The first piece that I want to focus on is the avenue for allowing feedback when you communicate. I think as teachers, and especially this week, to be honest with you, as a fault, we've talked a lot about, I have something to say and I'm going to share it with the people that need to hear it. And I'm going to make sure that process is really clear and concise. And maybe I'm even going to use video to enhance my tone. But allowing for then your audience to respond back to you is a huge piece of communication. Can you talk more about why that's important and how that can happen?
Yeah, so I mean, why it's important is because obviously we get better when we're together, when we're able to talk with each other. I'm going to look at things from a certain vantage point, and I'm going to see it, and it's going to be clear for me. I was a teacher. I was a building administrator sort of thing. So gosh, like I'm a pretty smart guy. Like if I write down this email, it makes sense to me. It's pretty clear. But I have to step back and say, like, am I thinking about all the ramifications and things that I'm not thinking about? So like the journey over time, for example, is when we change the master schedule or change the schedule or even change the bell schedule for the day. And, there are times where I sometimes get it right. And I had to pause to myself and say things like, who would this impact? Who is this decision going to impact? And you start to think about, well, transportation, the bus transportation. So maybe I got to get that, transportation supervisor in. Lunches are effective. So are my cafeteria workers understanding about this? I've got students going to other schools. So are those other building principals and administrators okay with this? How's that going to impact the classroom? So what do the teachers think? So you kind of have to sometimes step back and say, am I seeing the full picture? And sometimes we're not. So we have to bring other people in to say, who am I missing in this room and whose voice is not represented here and that I need to get?
Well, and I think that's the other piece that I think is so important that you touched on is making sure that the right people are in the room. And that is sometimes hard to not only accomplish, but even determine, right? So you might go through a process and saying, I'm not the only person that needs to be in this discussion. I need to identify all the people. And then once I identify them, I'd figure out a way for us to all come together somehow. And I think that in and of itself is a huge challenge or hurdle that you might overcome, or that you might be striving to overcome in your communication style.
It is. And it like I said, obviously it's great if you could be as proactive as possible. My assistant superintendent, Angie Adrian, I love where she sometimes transforms. I'll walk in and I'll say something like, I've got this work that I need to send to the principals. Would you take a look at it? Mm-hmm. And as I'm handing it to her, she's sitting there and she almost transforms and she goes, okay, I'm a building principal. You're handing to me this for the first time. I'm in the middle. It's November. I'm getting ready to do Thanksgiving break is coming around the corner and you've just handed this document to me. I'm thinking about, this. And then I snatched it back out of her hand and said, wait a minute, hold on a second. Because we sometimes have to put ourselves, when we think about empathy, for example, that word empathy, it's great that we use that word, but how does it manifest itself? Well, an empathy moment is sitting down and walking through the lens of all the different, I'm going to use the word stakeholders, but who are the people that could be impacted or affected? And so this idea of when Angie transforms into how am I feeling right now? What am I thinking right now? And who might be impacted? She starts to play that out. And then I pause and go, oh gosh, I didn't think about this, and this. Yeah. And so pausing for those moments really does matter.
Timing is such a huge piece. And I think the avenue of being able to put yourself in somebody's shoes really helps you determine timing, the way your language might be affected, and anything in between in any sort of communication. I mean, I think that's an enormous part of ensuring that your message is not only heard, but heard in a solution-seeking, forward-moving manner. And I do think it changes depending on the time of the year and what that other person, whether it be a parent, a student, a teammate, a staff member, is going through. I mean, you're right. Communicating with the teacher in August is very different than communicating with a teacher in September or November or December. We even have to think about that from a Teach Better team perspective of, are we going to offer a lot of webinars and professional development the second week of August? Spoiler alert, no. There's no way. Really our communication right now is, hey, we're here to be helpful, because every educator right now is juggling 15 items. Whereas maybe in February, when people are feeling a little dreary, there's kind of this lull that comes in February. It's like, okay, now we'd love to shift our communication because people don't need the same things during the same moments in time throughout the year.
I mean, it's interesting. So our district, our superintendent in Worthington Schools, he has 6 expectations. I'm not going to go over all 6 of them, but one of them is communicate, communicate, communicate. And he says you have to say it. Yeah, and he said, I'm saying it 3 times because you have to say it over and over again. Obviously, we've heard that before. You have to think about it from different angles. You can't just say I emailed 3 times, because it might be an email, a newsletter, and a face-to-face. You have to think about how to, especially this day and age, how to capture people's attention. Well, it was interesting because I remember he really worked hard once on trying to clearly communicate with families about a certain initiative that was happening. And I thought he saturated, everything. And he got initial feedback that was, you didn't do a good job of communicating. And I'll tell you, I got into Papa Bear mode of ready to defend my superintendent on no, he did this, and this. And his first reaction was, maybe I didn't do a good enough job. And that was a learning lesson for me, is we tend to get frustrated about other people and why didn't they do this and why didn't they do that. But I think that our first initial reaction needs to be, what could have I done differently and better to communicate? Because really, if we're sending that message and sharing that message, it really starts with us. And so it might not be that, I think to your point, I sent the email, but did I send it in the right frame? Was I very clear? Was I concise? Was I, did it lead to more questions? And if so, then was that effective? So those things matter.
Yeah, earlier this week and even just throughout this week, we've been discussing that topic specifically. And I love that you highlighted communicate, communicate, communicate. And your example was to communicate in 3 completely different ways, right? Your example was an email, a face-to-face conversation, a newsletter, and that really opens up the conversation of the mediums we utilize to communicate. And a lot of our discussion this week, it started even the week before when Caitlin Giordano joined us. You know that we love Caitlin, but she brought up the use of video in communication, that really allows the educator or whomever is communicating to give their tone, to share some perspective. I think it's a really good way to share excitement. You can really control the narrative of what you're sharing if you're doing it with a smile and some inflection. And then we transitioned, Jeff Gargis started us off on Monday. And one of our biggest focus is when you send an email, always sending kind of like the former updates that are still relevant somewhere in the email. So it can be a short, quick update at the very top of the email, but then put a little line that says anything below this point, you've already been updated on. But that way, regardless of what email they're reading, they have the most updated information. So you're really saturating them with the same information to really ensure the consistency. And then we evolved throughout the week, and people kept adding new layers to this. And I think your beautiful example of, yeah, don't just send the email that has all the details. Don't just send the video. What else can you do, right? Can you send a note home? Can you post something in the teacher's lounge? Can you put it on the website? Because you really just want to meet people in some regard of where they're at that point in time.
Absolutely.
I read emails all the time.
Yeah. I mean, we all know that people want to receive communication in different ways. There's a running joke with a couple of my friends that, they're like, we'll use Slack. We'll put everything in Slack. And I've not jumped on the Slack bandwagon sort of thing. And I'm like, I don't know. It's like my friend list right now. I can't have another app. Like I can't deal with one more app. But, so if it's one more email or one more website I have to go to, it may be, and here's the thing, it may be easy for the educator to say, why can't they just go to my website? Or why can't they just go to such and such? But we have to flip it to kind of go, okay, who's our customer? And I don't mean to use it that way, but how are we trying to, effectively hit them? It's not about them hitting me. And I more think about, again, I'm the secondary administrator. It's more harder to do at the middle school or high school level because there's eight teachers or 9 teachers that a student's dealing with or families dealing with. And you think about, and I'm going to go like executive functioning skills, forget executive functioning. Like it's not fair to try to have to navigate kids through all those different mediums. It's a little bit easier at the elementary level, a little bit. Like, I don't want to make it seem as though it's simple, but those things we have to be cognizant of. We can't just kind of sit in our spot again from an empathy standpoint and say, I'm the math teacher. Why can't they just do it? I'm going to do it my way, even if you're the most efficient.
And that actually, Neil, was a huge focus of our conversation yesterday with Holly Stewart. So if you're listening right now and you want to dive into this deeper, Holly had so much to share last morning on the Daily Drop-In because she connected. I thought this was mind-blowing, to be honest. I think I should probably be careful like watching my face on camera because I think she was speaking and I had this moment because she was relating communication to organization. And really her focus was, she's a middle school teacher too. We get all these people that have the same love for this age group. And her perspective was that she was actually using a collaborative team to communicate homework assignment and to-dos. And she wanted to ensure that it wasn't just the science teacher using one medium and another teacher using another, but how can we come together and kind of simplify all of the work that our parents, that our students need. And then as she dove into this, we got into a little bit of a discussion around people understanding what they can get and what the expectation is if you're going to give them a different medium. So from a leadership level, you might communicate across 5 or 6 different platforms because your audience is a few different places and you want to meet them where they're at. Whereas if I'm a classroom teacher and I'm going to use a collaborative space with other teachers, I want to make sure that my parents know if they log in here to see the information, they know exactly what they can get out of that, because that clear communication, that expectation allows for it to be easier for a teacher to kind of, or for a parent to kind of meet you halfway because they understand the intention behind it, right?
Yeah, you remind me of, so I teach a class also. And one day I was asking my students, and I was saying, we don't meet every day. It's a blended learning class. And I said, how do you want me to remind you of the dates that we have? Do you want me to do it through GroupMe, an email, or you want me to print something out you can put in your locker? Because I would have been that locker guy, like print something out. All of them were like, yes. And I was like, no, which one? And they were like, yes. And so I got a little frustrated at first, and I'll be honest, it was. And then I had to calm myself down and say, look, I'm creating the same document, but I'm putting it in 3 different places. It's not necessarily more work. But it just was funny because, 1/3 wanted it this way and 1/3 had wanted it this way. And my ultimate goal has to be that I want them to be there, and I want them to know how things are happening. So if we have to adjust a little bit, then I think we adjust a little bit.
Neil, I want to go back to your conversation earlier about feedback, because feedback is something I love. It's like maybe one of my favorite things right now. It kind of evolves. You have like favorite things you like to learn about and touch on. Feedback right now, I think, is like one of my favorite things to learn about, to discuss, because it really is like it's a whole world in one concept. And I think people have fear with opening up the masses to provide feedback, because the assumption is, and I've talked about this a lot in other realms, but when you welcome someone into your space, you believe that the feedback you're going to get is criticism. But on the flip side, what I found is that when you welcome people into your space, you might get suggestions, but really I find that you get an abundance of affirmation as well. And so I think the avenue of opening yourself up to receive feedback, while scary, has a lot of benefits. Do you have any strategies that a teacher or an administrative leader could consider on not only how they could welcome actually the feedback, like the strategy of getting feedback, but also like any tips of how to overcome the fear that comes with it?
Yeah. And it's, it's interesting because this is one of the books that I read over the summer was Doug Reeves talks about fearless schools, and this concept about psychological safety comes into play. And this is actually one of my goals for the year that I'm talking, like not just goal, but like my evaluation goal for my own self is, how do I create a sense for members, of whatever room I'm around in that group, to feel not be embarrassed or feel ridiculed or punished or rejected for speaking up. So it comes on both ways. It's like if people aren't sharing information in your room when you say, do you have any questions, and there's crickets chirping, that's a problem, because you the leader has not created that environment. On the flip side to what you're saying, I have to be open to that. Like you and I've talked about this before. Like I've got to have, as the person, like this thick skin to come in and ask for feedback.
Wait, are we pulling in my favorite Neil Gupta? Like this is my favorite thing. I quote you all the time. I know you quote somebody else when you say it, but it's the skin of an armadillo and a heart of a marshmallow. And I just love that. Absolutely. And so, in theory, and I'm going to say this, in theory, the hope is your team is going to do it in a kind way. And that's how if there's good trust. And again, Doug Reeves talks about this, by developing trust and thinking about the culture and the environment of how you phrase things and how things happen. And again, it's how you facilitate it, to say, start off with what are good things. Like if you just say, what's the feedback, people may be in that headspace to say, because that's just how sometimes people are wired, is just give kind of, what went wrong. But if you start out with, what were the things that went well? What are suggestions you have for the next time? It's how you phrase it, not what went bad, but what do you give me a suggestion for the next time. Some of those tactical things can help out, but at the end of the day, I do have to say that people also have varying levels of criticism or how feedback happens. And I think but we still can't use that as a prevention of not even opening the door to say, let's bring people in, because it's that toughness of, we have to be better, because if we keep in that mindset of, this is for the kids, this is for our students. I mean, all egos aside, my students one day, told me I was teaching a lesson and they were all confused, and I can't understand why they were all confused, because I'm like the best teacher in the world, obviously. And I got, and they said, like, this is so confusing. And, but
the initial reaction could be like, you guys are all wrong, or it could be, what am I doing wrong? And ultimately, it's not about my ego. And I think, again, that's what the gray hair and no hair is starting to get for me, is it's not about me. It's about how we do better and how we, are there for our kids. And so if you walk in with those kind of mindsets, I think then you kind of relax in that part of, now, will somebody possibly attack you if I'm maybe in a room of parents, or I'm, in a room of staff? Maybe. And that's possible. But then you have to just kind of stay in that realm of like, again, feedback is good and feedback is how we get better. But ultimately, culture and community is what drives it, and sometimes how we phrase the questions to begin with.
Interesting. No, and I couldn't agree more. I truly believe that there's, you take everything with a grain of salt, and you do your stinking best. And and honestly, one of the safe havens is to have that collaborative partner that maybe can either hear the feedback or do a debrief with you after the fact, and help you kind of find the pieces that you really should focus on in the masses of hopefully the wealth of feedback that you were able to receive, and you kind of move forward from there. Some of the strategy in terms of how to receive feedback, you've been noting a lot of kind of opening up the discussion, right? Having a more conversational feedback forum. I know Karen throws in that she provides feedback from students by them utilizing a QR code that links to a Google form. I've been seeing that a lot. So whether you link some sort of like survey or Google form to your website, a QR code is so easy to pop up somewhere. I see QR codes used all the time, especially now that COVID has been so prevalent where they don't want the contact. I mean, it's such an easy way if you have students that have a phone in some regard, depending on their age, or, if they have iPads that they can utilize, that really allows people to easily get access to links and resources to share their voice. And I think it adds an additional element of this, that if you want feedback, you have to make it easy for them to provide the feedback. It really takes a special person who's going to hunt and hunt and hunt and hunt for the way to give you feedback. If you open up the conversation and dialogue, if you give them an easy, accessible QR code, you're going to get more feedback because it's easy for them to do so. Also, hitting reply to an email. If you send an email and say, hey, hit reply to this email, let me know your thoughts. I mean, we do that for Teach Better mass emails that you guys see from me every so often if you're on our email list. And people just click reply. It's right there. It's super easy. And then it sends off my way, and I'm able to get the answers and information I need too. So it's very valuable.
It's great.
Yeah. So good. Neil, we obviously have had a lot of discussion, right? We've discussed feedback. We've discussed communication. I'd love, if you don't mind, for us to kind of recap the week. There's been a lot shared around this topic. Continue to get your insight as we do that. And then we will close out with a big challenge to our network. So we'll be right back. How you feel with these transitions? You liking these?
The music is upbeat. Is this like Jeff's thing, or is this your find?
How dare you think that something great that came from Teach Better is Jeff Gargis's idea? Seriously?
You're like, Neil, I invited you, and we got through 47 minutes without a Jeff Gargis reference, and you went there in the 47th minute.
You know what?
You went there.
At least pick somebody better on the Teach Better team, right? There are like 26 people on the Teach Better team. You could have gone with Dave Schmittou, Caitlin Giordano. Karen Evans hasn't even been announced yet, but she's brand new to the team. We have ambassadors that could have brought us this idea. We have Alex in the comments, Brian Fennell's in the comments. We have Megan Wells. There are so many people that could have come up with this, and you want to go with Jeff Gargis?
I went Jeff. I went Jeff. So,
I just want you to read this, Neil. Do you see?
I get it. I am Team Ray all the way. It just was, I don't know.
Alex is noting that Jeff did kind of work in the music industry. Okay, for those of you that don't know Jeff's background, he did, yes, have a record label. So fine. I guess that was a realistic prediction.
There you go.
I am not taking full credit for those commercials, because the reality is that we couldn't really put anything video together without the incredible Jeff Gargis. But no way.
So I'm right?
I did some of this, okay? Some of it.
All right. All right,
Give
we'll
me
take it.
a minute amount of credit, like at least 2 or 3 percentage points. Come
We'll
on.
give it to you. Okay. All right.
Brian says, I always like when Ray says fluff ain't enough. We've said that a lot this week. Neil, fluff ain't enough has come up, I think, multiple times in multiple segments of Daily Drop-In. Maybe we need a blog post of some fluff ain't enough content for some people. That would be funny.
I think actually Alex was saying that he's waiting for your book to come out with that title.
He did say that earlier. That's so funny. You know, I have to say, I was meeting with Liv, which everybody loves. Liv.
Like, why does everybody say that? Like, somebody says live, and then everybody else goes love.
I know, it's true. And she even came up yesterday. I mean, this is a week of Liv, but I was meeting with her, and she's like, I have a really crazy idea. And anytime an educator says that to you, you're always like, ooh, tell me more, right? Like, ooh, let me know what this crazy idea is. And she goes, well, we have these themes every single week for Daily Drop-In. And I'm like, we do. And she's like, and we intentionally bring in the people who are going to be able to lend their voice to that topic, who have some sort of expertise or really a passion for the brainstorming around that idea. And I was like, that's true. And she goes, so why aren't we publishing specific blogs to further enhance those conversations the week that's the theme? And I'm like, Liv, I think you're a genius. I know. So I was like, what's the turnaround time? I was like, do you think we can get that done within the next 6 months, that we kind of look ahead of what Daily Drop-In's themes are going to be? I'm like, I know it's not public, but we could kind of like let our guest bloggers know in advance, right? Give them the inside scoop, but we could get some content. She goes, yeah, I'm thinking like 2 weeks from now we can start this. I'm like, oh my God. So
absolutely. I mean, there are some amazing bloggers would teach better. So it would be almost like challenge accepted. I don't think that will be an issue either.
So I think Carrie and Liv are constantly elevating. And I was like, you know, Carrie and Liv are full-time educators. Liv is an administrator. Carrie is a 7th grade English teacher. I'm like, how are we going to do this? And they're like, we'll find time. We'll find time. Be fine. But they are so fun. And I love when they come up with big, crazy ideas. I just tell you, of all the things for the Teach Better team, I know that we joke that Jeff Gargas has his hand in lots of projects. I think the craziest people are the leads of the team, like the lead of the ambassadors, or the lead of our podcast network, or the lead of our guest bloggers. Those people on the team are the crazy people. If you're looking for who's a little wacky, go to the Teach Better team website and find whoever's the lead of a group, because trust me, they're the nuttiest. I promise.
Yeah, my profile would be they don't sleep. The people, that group right there doesn't sleep as many hours as everybody else, and drink lots of coffee. There's something in there.
Yes, they are so nutty. But anyway, so let's talk about this week. So we started the conversation around communication the week beforehand with Caitlin Giordano, who really went into this big narrative around video content, communicating during videos or through videos. And I'm going to actually pull up my calendar. If you missed that one, I want to make sure you catch it. That was on the 5th of August. So if you go through Daily Drop-In, you can obviously catch all of these videos after the fact when they're recorded on wherever you're watching, like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. I think YouTube's probably the easiest. If you just want the audio, Teach Better Talk podcast has literally them listed by date. The 5th is when Caitlin was with us. Then Jeff Gargas joined us on Monday, the 9th. And that's where we got into like that email communication. How can you be clear in your emails when you communicate often? Not necessarily communicating different things in your emails, but really solidifying that communication via email. We then moved into a conversation with Katie Miglin, and she was a ball because her perspective really came from a classroom teacher communication, right? Communicating with parents and our students and how you streamline those pieces. And then Brad Hughes on Wednesday on the 11th really added in a perspective of the administrator. He's an elementary administrator, and he really believes in wanting to make our communication streamlined, which allowed Holly to come in on the 12th and talk about the simplistic element of communication, wanting to ensure that your communication, while very robust, allows your listener, your audience, to really get the most specific, the most intentional communication as they can, your addition, Neil, today has been so many things, but the biggest takeaways for me has been the avenue for feedback in that loop of communication throughout the process, not just at the end, and also having the right people involved in the conversation. I think with all these pieces together, we really have formed, hopefully, a very valuable element of reflection and process for sharing thoughts and also getting feedback on those pieces.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that's robust. I wish like, and again, I'll take a lot of those things back with me of the ones you shared earlier this week. But, wherever you are in your journey, just hearing a couple of those things to say, can I implement one or two of those things, will be a game changer. So going into this next school year, the idea of communication, of how people are kind of feeling, and that idea of stress and focus, focusing on a couple of those things are really going to help in the long run.
Neil, we always end our Fridays with kind of a challenge, and it's perfect because on Mondays we have a challenge for the week, which Jeff Gargas provided us on Monday. And now I'd love to shift the conversation a little bit and really talk about what can we do over the weekend. I'm not looking to assign some big homework assignment to our incredible audience, but what should people be thinking about? What action can we challenge them to take that after we've been discussing and discussing and discussing, we don't just want topics to exist in like this overarching, feel or theme. We really want them to get into the nitty gritty, the tactical takeaways, the action steps, which I know you feel very passionately about as somebody who wants to enact change and inspire growth. So what can we tell our audience right now that they should truly do this weekend from Friday to Sunday night? What can they do?
Yeah. So actually, I do have a weekly email that I send to my principals, and it's a Friday focus. So first of all, it's consistent, and it's always there. But in there, I have a challenge for the week. So actually, it's perfect timing. And the challenge actually goes with, building in regular scheduled times for bringing people together and for reflection. So we do a great job of planning, and then we implement whatever that plan is. And then we go to the next thing to plan and implement, and that's just how we're wired for that next thing. But we have to build in those checkpoints for reflection, bringing people together to debrief. And again, it's scary. But I think Ray, you hit it, is that we walk in and say, give me some feedback. And we tend to think the story in our head is it's only going to be negative. And that's not true. People realize, and you walk away sometimes affirmed, and people start to realize how much work really occurred for that to take place. But bringing in those voices helps us to get better. So things that you even did this week, if you look back, like we had schedule pickup at our school, because next week we've got kids coming back to our schools. We're starting next week. But my challenge to our principals was schedule a time with, again, parents, students, administrative assistants, some teachers, counselors, whatever, and get them together next week and say, what were some things that we could do better next year? And what were things that we need to keep doing? But those things matter. Don't just keep lock and load and moving, or else we find out that we don't really, and sometimes we create frustration and anxiety when we don't do that.
Right. No, I love that challenge. Consider and make a plan right now, whether it's writing it down in your to-do list. Guys, you should see my to-do list. It is a hot mess. I'll be working on that later today. Or maybe you're actually going to send the email or schedule the meeting, but find your way, your avenue to scheduling a time to get the right people together and make a plan for the year, because they are going to benefit from not only you welcoming them into the conversation, but getting some consistency so they know they're a part of the process, not only right now, but for the entire year that you'll be in your position of fostering that conversation. So I love it, Neil. Neil, thank you so much for coming live. I always love talking to you, and I just think the world of you and your incredible family, and I just so appreciate you.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
For everyone listening, I want to challenge you to have a wonderful day. Enjoy your last sip of coffee as you're headed into a beautiful, beautiful Friday morning. We wish you nothing but an incredible weekend, and we'll be back with you on Monday morning, bright and early, 7 a.m. Eastern, with some incredible guests next week. You will be welcomed on Monday morning with Dave Schmittou and Katie Miglin kicking off our Monday morning. And we hope that you continue to foster not only strong conversations, but allow us to transition next week into the importance of building relationships. So We will see all of you next week. Thank you for all that you do, and let us know if you need anything. Bye, guys.